Welcome to Too Fond of Books. My name is Janelle and this is a tag video. It feels like it's been a long time since I've done a tag video, but there's been some really great ones going around recently, and this one is the Reread Book Tag. I was not technically tagged to do this, but sort of. So this was originally created by Roz from Scallydandling About the Books, and let me see who did it. I believe Dane from Dane Reads was tagged and did the video, and then in the comment section below I commented about kind of how I reread something connected to something he said in the video, and then another commenter from Big Bad Hard Classics, something like that, told me I should do the tag. So I'm counting that as me being tagged to do this video, because I thought these questions were really interesting, mostly because I've always thought that I was a huge rereader. I love to reread books, and I reread books a lot. But when I went back and I looked on Goodreads at the books that I've reread this year, it was actually far lower. The number was far lower than I thought that it was. So I think that there are times in your life where you reread maybe more often than other times. And this particular year just is the year where I read more first-time books than reread books, I guess. But let's just get right into it. The first question. Let's assume you do reread if you're doing this tag. Yes, I do. So, where do you sit on the rereading scale from almost never to all the time? I would have said all the time. I love to reread. I don't tend to buy a lot of books that I have not read before. I will get them from the library. The books in my collection are books that I've read that I love, that I know that I will want to read again. So I would have said all the time. I do love to reread books, but apparently, like I said, this year I haven't reread as many as I have in the past. When I went back and I looked, I think it was only about 20 books this year that I've reread, and I'm at over 200 books so far this year. Blame it on COVID-19 or whatever you want, but I've read a lot this year and not nearly as many rereads as I thought I did. Question 2. Has that changed over your reading life? Yes. First of all, as a kid and a teenager, I reread a lot. I did make good use of the library, but if it was a book that I liked, I would probably read it more than once before I took it back to the library. And then, of course, the books that I owned, which weren't a huge amount, I reread those over and over again. If I like a story, I'll reread it. I love the familiarity. I love knowing what's going to happen, and it feels like just coming back to characters that I know and I love, and a world that I know and love. So question 3 is, when do you reread? Maybe immediately after finishing a book, or not till years later, or when the mood strikes. I've been trying to think if I have reread a book immediately after finishing it, other than when I was a child. I definitely did that when I was a kid, but as an adult, I'm not sure if I have. I think there have been times when I have been tempted to, but there are so many books that I want to read that I just feel like I don't have the time. Although, months or years later, I will definitely reread it. I think what I would have to say is I reread when the mood strikes. I am definitely a mood reader, and that's why I usually have multiple books going on at one time. And so if I see a book on the shelves that catches my attention, I'll read it. And so definitely when the mood strikes. Question 4. Why do you reread books? So there's a couple of reasons here. One, I've already said, I reread sometimes because I want to go back to that world or characters that I'm familiar with. It's a book that I know I love, and so I will reread it just because I know I'm going to enjoy it. But another reason why I reread is I read a lot of series. And so when there's a new book coming out in a series, I probably don't have time to reread the entire series, but I will often reread the book that was out just before the next book in the series to remind myself of the characters and what was happening. Just because I read so many series that I can get confused. I always forget what happens, which is why I can reread mysteries, which is kind of nice, actually. Question 5. How do you reread? Faster, slower, just the best bits? I don't know if I've ever just read the best bits. If I reread a book, I'll reread the whole book. And I don't think I would reread them slower. I would probably reread them faster, because even though I don't really remember it, there's probably parts that I would reread faster because I would remember those parts. I think in general I reread the same as I read a book. Question 6. Who or what do you reread? More specifically, which authors or genres or individual books? I don't really know. I think, I mean, as far as authors go, I reread Jane Austen and the Brontes. I've reread those. Those are kind of like, you know, if it's Jane Austen, I'm going to reread it for sure. I do tend to reread some of my favorite mysteries or historical mysteries. I will reread those for sure. And if it's just a favorite book, then I will reread it. So for example, Wilkie Collins is a favorite author of mine, although I have only read 2 of his books, but I have reread those books multiple times. So Wilkie Collins is a definite reread for me. I've read The Moonstone multiple times, and The Woman in White definitely multiple times. I love The Woman in White. 7. Is there a book that you found better when you reread it? Possibly. I can't think off the top of my head. Possibly, actually, An Instance of the Finger Post by Ian Pears. I am fairly certain that I read that book years ago, and I liked it, but possibly didn't find it like super amazing. Whereas when I reread it this year, I read it for March Mystery Madness, and I gave it 5 stars, and I remember like just thinking, I don't know if I liked this book as much as I did before when I read it. Like, I just remember thinking like it's such a well-crafted mystery. It's a historical mystery set in Oxford during the Restoration, and it is so well crafted, and the use of the 4 narrators is brilliant. Like, it's like a master class in how to use narrators to tell us a mystery. And so I think that An Instance of the Finger Post definitely was a book that I found better the next time I read it. And was there one that was worse when I reread it? I don't think so. I can't think off the top of my head. It would be horrible if there was a favorite book that that I picked up to reread only to discover that it wasn't as good as before. I think that would be that would be a little bit heartbreaking, actually. And then question 9, which one book have you reread most times? Other than books that I read as a child, let's take that out of the equation. Probably The Woman in White by Wilkie Collins is the book that I've reread the most times. Maybe. I'm not entirely sure, but that's the one that I'm going to say. The Woman in White by Wilkie Collins. It is a fantastic mystery. It's gothic. It's got one of the best villains of all time. Count Fosco is such a good villain. And so yeah, I'm going to say The Woman in White. This was a really fun tag, the Reread Book Tag. And so I know this has been going around a lot, and so I'm not going to tag anybody specifically, but if you haven't done this tag yet and you're a rereader, then consider yourself tagged. This was really fun, and I hope you enjoyed this. And so let's chat in the comment section, because you know I love to talk about books. And so, what one book have you reread the most times? If you're a rereader, what's the one book that you've read the most? I would love to hear about that in the comment section down below, and I will see you for another video soon. Bye.